Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something that is honestly incredibly powerful. We're talking about how those invisible digital breadcrumbs, the ones we all leave behind every single day, are becoming the ultimate key to solving modern crimes. We're going to trace the exact steps investigators took to solve the truly tragic murder of Tiffany Ferguson. And, as you'll see, they relied almost entirely on the digital footprints left behind by the suspect. Okay, to get us started, I want to ask you a pretty heavy question. How much of your life is actually hidden in your search history? No, seriously, think about it for a second. If someone were to grab your phone right now and just scroll through the last 20 things you Googled, what story would that tell? What are your daily worries, your intentions? As we're going to see in this explainer, those seemingly harmless search queries, they can actually form an undeniable map of human behavior. And in this specific case, they formed a map of guilt.
Let's start with Section 1, a tragic Nashville night, and the physical limitations.
So to really understand the digital solution here, we've got to first understand the physical crime. On February 28, 2017, in the Wedgwood, Houston neighborhood of South Nashville, Tiffany Ferguson was tragically stabbed 9 times in her condo. Now, investigators initially had some physical evidence, but they immediately hit these massive limitations. They had video surveillance, right? But it was a rainy, super dark night, which made the footage just incredibly grainy. They could see a guy pulling on car door handles, and then he eventually switched to checking house doors until, he found Tiffany's door unlocked. He went in to burglarize the place, stacking up items like a laptop, and when he fled, he went down some nearby train tracks. He left behind this highly unique hat, it had an old-school Nintendo controller on it, and eventually, police even recovered a kitchen knife. This physical evidence did allow police to develop a suspect. It was a homeless man named Christopher McLaurin. But here's the absolutely crucial point. The video was just too grainy to confirm his identity beyond a reasonable doubt. They brought him in, they seized his phone, but physical evidence alone just wasn't going to be enough to close the case. They desperately needed more. Moving right along to Section 2, bypassing the digital wall, the technical roadblock. Okay, so police have McLaurin's older LG phone, but they immediately hit a brick wall, a massive technical roadblock. The phone was locked with an unknown passcode. And remember, this was back in 2017. Standard digital evidence usually came from easily accessible text messages and internet history. Because they didn't know the code, investigators couldn't just sit there and guess it. They had to use a highly technical process called chip-off or ISP extraction. Honestly, think of a phone's passcode like a giant, impenetrable software wall that's just protecting all the data behind it. To get that data, they couldn't go through the wall, they had to go under it. They had to completely bypass the software and physically attack the hardware itself. And guys, the actual process for this is literally straight out of a spy movie. First, they had to admit they just couldn't beat the firmware passcode, the software imitation. So they got physical. They actually removed the physical eMMC memory chip from the phone using intense heat, milling, or literally using grinding tools. I think this brilliantly shows just how high the stakes were here. Chip-off is an absolute last resort. I mean, one tiny slip of the grinder or just a fraction too much heat, and boom, you destroy the chip. If that happens, the data is gone forever, and the whole case might just go cold. But they did it. They successfully extracted it, pulling the raw data off that tiny piece of silicon, and then they analyzed it using an incredible forensic tool called Magnet Axiom. That brings us to Section 3, a chilling digital timeline, mapping the suspect's life. All right, so once they actually had that raw data, investigators were able to start mapping out the suspect's life, basically minute by minute. Now, even though McLaurin was homeless and didn't have active cell service, he was using a nearby Wi-Fi connection at a U-Haul center to get on the internet. And from this, we can see a really stark behavioral baseline. If you look at the 4 weeks prior to the crime, it's all just mundane, repetitive survival stuff. He's searching for things like dope drugs, bus fare, and stolen merchandise. But then, right after the crime occurs, his search history abruptly changes. He types in a highly specific query, Nashville murder stabbing. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is that this wasn't part of his normal pattern. This was a glaring, undeniable shift in behavior, all captured perfectly in the data. But wow, it did not stop there. You can literally watch the panic setting in real time. Because it was raining that night, just 1 hour after the crime, he searches, "Will rain wash away fingerprints?" 2 hours later, he's digging even deeper. He's searching for latent print examination and literally browsing Yahoo Answers criminal law forums. I mean, really? By hour 3, he's on Wikipedia reading, "How do police find fingerprints to catch criminals?" And finally, 4 hours after the murder, he searches, "How long after fingerprints are lifted do police make an arrest?" As the investigators noted, this is not just happenstance. This is no coincidence. This is literally a ticking clock of a suspect accidentally, but completely incriminating himself out of pure panic. Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, the smoking gun search, finding the undeniable proof. Now, despite all of those incredibly suspicious searches we just talked about, investigators still needed to definitively link McLawhorn to the actual physical crime scene. And right in the middle of all that panic about fingerprints and rain, there was one more search query logged, about 4 hours after the murder. Just 2 simple words: pawn shops. Because he searched for pawn shops, investigators were able to look at the location data and realize, hey, he was looking for the absolute closest one to Tiffany's house. That one little search led investigators right down Franklin Road to a place called Cash America Pawn. And the evidence they uncovered there, it was completely damning. First off, they recovered a pawn ticket that was logged exactly 4 hours after the murder. And what did he pawn? A ring. Specifically, a ring stolen from Tiffany's roommate during the burglary. Secondly, Cash America Pawn had high-quality surveillance video from that exact same time. The video showed a crystal-clear image of Christopher McLawhorn. And get this, he was wearing the exact same clothing that was seen in that initial super grainy video outside Tiffany's condo. That single internet search literally bridged the gap between a suspicious digital profile and the unassailable physical proof they needed to nail him. Which really makes this quote from Detective Chad Gish, a 22-year veteran of the Metro Nashville Police Department, just hit so much harder. He said, "What has digital forensics done for us in this case? Absolutely everything." By using the digital footprint extracted from that tiny, physically removed microchip and presenting it clearly in court via magnet axiom, Christopher McLawhorn was ultimately convicted. He was sentenced to life in prison plus extra years. And finally, Section 5, Justice and Legacy, honoring Tiffany Ferguson. You know, while the technology we've discussed today is absolutely fascinating, we really have to remember that at the center of this story is a real human life, a life that was tragically cut way too short. But Tiffany Ferguson's memory definitely continues to live on. A scholarship fund was actually set up in her honor in her hometown of Laredo, Tennessee. Every single year, it's awarded to a high school graduate who doesn't just achieve academically, but who really embodies the same nurturing and selfless qualities that completely defined Tiffany's life. It's just a really beautiful legacy, ensuring that her light outshines the darkness of that terrible February night. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought. We've seen exactly how a discarded hat, a locked phone, and a desperate string of late-night Google searches all wove together to serve justice. But man, it really makes you look at that device sitting in your pocket a little differently, doesn't it? If you disappeared tomorrow, what story would your digital footprint tell? Thank you so much for joining me today, and I really hope this deep dive gave you a totally new perspective on the invisible trails we all leave behind.